So the iPhone 15 Pro Max might be the steal of the year when it comes to a used iPhone value pick. So let's find out why you might want to consider buying the iPhone 15 Pro Max in 2020. What is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology, and hope you're having a happy new year. And today we're going to kick off the year with a should you buy iPhone series, starting with the 15 Pro Max. So this one has actually depreciated to a point where you can actually get this Max phone for in the range of $500 to $650. Now, if you think about that, that is actually less than the starting tag of an iPhone 17, and you'll get a triple camera. You'll get a 120 hertz display just like the 17. You'll also get Apple Intelligence support, and you're also going to get a larger display with a titanium build that has similar flat edges and is also pretty light for a Max device. So there's a lot of specs on hand here that are really impressive for not paying the official starting price that this phone came in at over $1,000. So it's a good deal right now on this phone. I want to begin by talking about the body, the build, the design, why this is still one of my favorite choices, even though the phone came out a few years ago, or a couple years ago actually. So just for a quick key spec refresh, this phone does have a 6.7-inch Super Retina XDR OLED display, 2796 by 1290 pixels. It is a 48 megapixel triple camera. Not all cameras are 48 though. Two of them are 12 megapixels. And we do have 8 gigabytes of RAM on board, Apple A17 Pro chipset in here. So this phone actually has the same RAM level as like the base iPhones. The 440, well, it's 4,441 milliamp hour battery. So actually a larger battery capacity back up in here than both 17 and Air. So these devices do have pretty sizable batteries. But let's talk about the body and the build. This phone weighs in at a nice 221 grams. So for its size, 6.7 inches titanium build, this actually feels lighter than the majority of the Max phones out there, including 16 Pro Max, 13 Pro Max, 14 Pro Max, 17 Pro Max even. They are going to maybe go even thicker and heavier on this year's model later this year in the 18 Pro Max. And while people have proven time and time again that they don't care about lightness over battery because people are really going for the phones that have more battery life, regardless if they're heavier, that's proven by the Air and the Max this year, it's still nice that you get a large battery in here while still having a lighter design. So this phone actually has pretty darn good battery life while still not being super heavy. So I do like that about this, and it also still feels premium with this titanium frame, grade 5. Now this does have the action button, but you'll see on this side no camera control button on here, so you're not gonna have any accidental presses. I am aware you can go ahead and double click to open that, you could set that up, but having no camera control button here means no accidental presses. However, that isn't a 5G antenna right there. Kind of looks the same, but doesn't really do anything besides give you good signal. Now you'll see right there, we do have the power button, but I really love this year's design because the titanium really made this phone feel super premium. The whole reminds me a lot of the Apple Watch's titanium frame, but generally this phone was very clean, stayed clean to the touch. USB-C, this was the year they brought USB-C to the iPhone, and so it still feels very modern in most respects. Actually, some people would pick this up and say it feels nicer or it looks nicer than the iPhone 17 Pro Max. Some would argue it doesn't because the flat edges are a little bit sharper. They're a little bit less comfortable than the rounded feel of the 17 Pro Max. But the 17 Pro Max also has a slipperier aluminum, so I find it to be a little bit easier to drop, although it does feel nicer. 17 Pro Max does feel like it could slip out of the hands a little bit more. This is grippier to me. So, you know, it's still overall a definite win. It's a definite pickup this year if you want to go ahead and save some cash and you really liked what this offer, but you're never really justifying paying $1,000 plus. The body and the build, this is definitely something I would consider in 2026 if you can find the one with a really decent battery capacity at a $600 price tag. You're gonna get quite a bit of feature for the money here. So let's go ahead and talk about the display quality itself. Now this panel is a little bit smaller than the new phones, but it's still a very nice one. Still has the same pixel density, so when you are reading text or doing anything of that sort, everything is still gonna look equally as sharp. Now at 2000 nits, it's a very bright panel, but the phones going to 3000 nits nowadays do look substantially brighter. Although it's not like this was not bright. This was already more bright than you probably needed in your day to day. It's still a 19:9 aspect ratio. So reading things on here, I would click an article. It's going to give me cookies and all that. But you can still read across here, no problem. If something would open without trying to get me to sign up, but you'll see that you can read across here, no problem. Text will look very sharp right there. And generally, it's still a really, really strong panel with ceramic shield glass. The device also does have HDR10 support, and it does have Dolby Vision. So generally, the calibration, the brightness, the sharpness, everything is still very strong. Although if you do like super razor thin bezels, this one doesn't have the thinnest bezels compared to the newer phones, although they're already ridiculous thin compared to previous iPhones. So slap a case on it, you're going to look like a bezel-less display essentially on this phone. So I don't really have an issue with that. It might be the sweet spot size for those of you who think the newer phones are pushing a little too far. The Air is a little bit too small with a 6.5. This might be the sweet spot size at 6.7. So a lot of people like their specific sizes, and if 6.7 is for you, this is going to be a pretty strong offering this year in 2026. There is one downside of this display though. I do find that sometimes this phone, because of its thermal efficiency not being the greatest, it will just randomly dim, and then you'll raise the brightness and it won't raise. It'll like, the slider will go up but it won't raise. I understand that's a protection feature for the battery, but at the same time, it's annoying. The phone auto dims sometimes when it gets too warm occasionally, and it happens a little bit more frequently on this phone than I find on the 16 Pro Max or 17 Pro Max, which it doesn't really occur hardly ever. So this phone has that one con to its display. But discussing the software, we're on iOS 26.2, and this software has been really the same thing as we're going to find on the newer iPhone 17 Pro Max. Yeah, we do even have log modes on here because it has Apple ProRes. So if we go over here, you can do log right there. Of course, you have to enable that in settings, but generally you're going to feel like you're using the same exact phone. This did launch with iOS 17, so it doesn't have quite as long of support left. You probably got about 3 years left on this phone, but that's still enough. I mean, if you buy this phone, it's a 3-year phone, guaranteed software updates essentially. It does have enough power and performance to support Apple Intelligence as well. So if we go in here, you do get that. The way you use visual intelligence will be a little bit different though. You'll have to enable it up in here. So if we go ahead and click, hold on. If we go ahead and click over here, add control, we're going to go ahead and just search it out here, visual intelligence. You'll just have to enable it within the control center. You won't have the camera button to go ahead and do that, but you are going to get the new Siri, and you'll get all those features that are essentially the same identical feel as the newer iPhone. You also do have the same liquid glass effects. You'll have the same icons, the same widgets. Everything is going to feel like you're using the brand new iPhone. So the software is a definite win for this phone, and you're getting good value for money because you're going to be able to play around with the same stuff people are using on the 17 Pro Max. Now, we discussed performance and thermals. This phone can easily play the top stuff out there. The only issue is that it throttles back a little bit more than the highest end phones. Now, throttling back, what I mean by that is that, the newer phones might stay a higher frame rate, smoother for a longer session. But for most mobile games already designed for phones to begin with, these are flagship phones, the 15 Pro and Pro Max. Yes, they get a little bit warmer. Throw a case on, you don't feel it too much, but it's still, even after all these updates, it's still, you could feel it more. This phone just doesn't have the same heat dispersion as the newer aluminum chassis unibody iPhone. So you're going to have to just deal with a little bit more heat if you want to save that money. That's the con of this device, but the performance is still strong. So I'm not worried about, recommending this to you to play some games, get your stuff done. Still has 8 gig RAM, still has the Pro chipset. So everyday tasks are not going to slow you down. Hardly ever. It can't hold as many apps in the background as, say, a 12 gig of RAM iPhone, but it's not bad either. Like, most people might not even notice it is an 8 gig of RAM because it tends to perform most general day-to-day tasks, as well as, a little bit pushing it even better. You're also still going to have access to iMovie and LumaFusion and different video editing suites. So, you could still get things done on here as well. And again, because it had enough power to support the AI, Apple Intelligent, rewrite tools, visual intelligence, this phone still feels a lot smarter than buying a 14 Pro Max, for example, although that might be a decent option as well. So we'll discuss that in a future video. So let's go ahead and talk about the cameras. So these cameras have been updated already for some newer iPhones. However, the main 48 megapixel sensor is essentially a similar thing here as newer phones. Now, when you zoom in, you still get pretty good consistency, and this was one of the first Max iPhones that started really bumping up the zoom 25 times, which is still more than enough for most users. Again, we talked about how you have 4K 60 log HDR video, you have cinematic slow motion, and the only real difference is that you get sharper macros, you get sharper, zooming on the 17 Pro Max, but other than that, it's kind of similar. What is different though is the front-facing camera on these. This one doesn't go far out, and this kind of has that traditional 12 megapixel they've been using forever and kind of looks the same as most iPhones. So it's not overly impressive on the front facing camera, but it still gets the job done. And playing with this phone in social media, going ahead and putting your photos, videos up on those platforms still looks better than a lot of Android phones today. It's just a fact. So I have no qualms recommending this to people who want a great camera on an iPhone. It doesn't look quite as good as the results we'll find on the newer phones. That's to be expected, but it is not that far behind either. Like, most people are going to have more than enough performance here from these cameras. It's just the zooming is getting so much better on a new phone. So if you really care about the area of zoom in 2026, this phone is probably not going to overly impress you. It'll get your job done, but it's not going to be like totally impressive like the 40x zoom of the newer iPhone. So that's just something to note about the camera, but otherwise it's a totally fine camera system. Now, when it comes to battery life, I think this is the area that people are going to be really concerned with most phones in 2026. Everybody seems to care about wanting to have the best battery life, and it makes a lot of sense, in this modern era with AI being used a lot on your phone, and also just heavy use, because these phones have become not just a fun thing to play with, they become a utility in our life, and we need these things to last all day because they're a tool that we rely on. So battery life is a big deal, I think, this year going into 2026. And the 15 Pro Max, not overly impressive, but not a weak performer either. So this phone is a day, and I would say about a quarter, whereas the 17 Pro Max is a day and a half, 2 days, some 2.5 days. So nowhere near 17 Pro Max levels, but better than iPhone Air, and you could probably argue maybe a little better than the 17 base model as well, which is already a good phone. This is probably closer to the base 17 Pro in battery life, so it's solid. And it got better over previous software updates as they did some tweaks to not let it get so hot, which was draining the battery life. But this phone, this was the best of the 15 series phones that I was using. The 15 Plus was up there as well, but the 15 Pro was not very impressive. This one, though, was just fine in the capacity. I think it's still enough here in this year to get by, especially provided you check that if you're buying this phone right now, that the battery capacity is either replaced or in good health, because that's going to be a key separator here for the iPhone. You want to have at least over 90% capacity if you are buying this, but I would actually try to go over 95%. If I was buying one of these now, look for something over 95%, so you have a long, good life left with that phone right there. One of the areas this phone is still better than some new iPhones as well is the audio performance. This is better than the Air and arguably as good as the iPhone 17 base, maybe even better than that. This phone is solid in audio, comes out both sides, stereo sound, so that's a very solid offering there. USB-C charging, not the fastest in the world, but it's USB-C. So if you've been using an older iPhone, you're not looking to pay big bucks, but you want a nice feeling one, you'll get your USB-C here. Large phone, nice cameras, and it'll be a solid offering for you on this front. Now, a couple other things I want to wrap up before we wrap up this video is that this phone does have emergency SOS. It does have the texting via satellite. We can also do the same ecosystem support, whether you have an Apple Watch Series 11, you have an Apple Watch Ultra. You're going to have the same ecosystem support with AirPods Max, just like every other iPhone out there. And it's going to do it very fast with the latest software. So this phone just feels like the latest phone with an older body. That's it. That's what it feels like. And, that's one of the pros of iPhones. I'm sure a lot of iPhone 15 Pro Max users are going to tell you a couple of things. Maybe they'll tell you in the comments that their battery could be better. Maybe they'll tell you they have some stutters here and there, very rarely. But I'm telling you, the 15 Pro Max still, in some respects, some people might still love this phone more just because of its titanium frame over the newer phones. So it's a pretty strong one, I would say. Connectivity and reception strength is also pretty much a thumbs up here for me. Final verdict: should you buy 2026 the iPhone in 2026 the iPhone 15 Pro Max? And the answer really relies on this. If you're one of those people who want to pick up an older iPhone for a slightly reduced price, well, now it's kind of a bigger reduced price. You're going to get a great device here. You really are. But provided somebody took care of it, or you get a new one reduced or a refurbished or a rebuilt one that's been properly done, maybe through Apple's refurbished store or whatever, you're going to come away with a really, really nice phone that's going to last you another 3 years easily while still feeling very premium. So this is one of my favorite picks already to start the year as a used iPhone. You know, we start the year with used iPhone videos, and this one is just definitely going to be one of them. So thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and I look forward to serving you in 2026. Once again, have a happy new year. Nick here. Be sure to be well.